The first use case to show in this video is the import of a fully digitized UVAR in the UVARbox tool. So as a prerequisite, a digitized UVAR in the correct data structure according to the datex2 UVAR model is needed. The import-export dialog can be triggered by clicking on the import icon above the list. First, you need to select a file for import. Only zip files are allowed. The zip file can contain one or more separate UVAR files in XML format. In the UVARbox project, some exemplary UVARs have been generated to be used for demonstration purposes. In this case, we use an example UVAR file representing a low emission zone. UVARs should always be validated when importing. All UVARs inside the selected zip file will be rejected if a single validation fails. The import button starts the import process. When the import process is finished, the user gets feedback if the import was successful. If the validation fails, the details can be displayed. After the successful import, the UVAR is stored in the database and the UVAR can be seen in the list, and the user can use the buttons, for example, zoom to geometry, to look at or edit the imported UVAR. The form of an UVAR can be opened by pressing the Edit UVAR or Open UVAR button. When opening the form, the UVAR is being loaded based on the information previously stored in the imported file. The map can be hidden by pressing the respective button on top of the list. The extended editing mode allows to add new elements to the UVAR by pressing the corresponding plus button. Disabling the extended editing mode gives a view in the UVAR without the functionality to add new elements. The extended editing mode can be enabled or disabled by pressing the pen button at the bottom of the form. The basic structure of a UVAR will be explained by looking at the example UVAR of type low emission zone. The different elements of a low emission zone are displayed as groups of elements, tabs, etc. to give guidance regarding the nested structure of the data. Regarding the structure, a UVAR is an entry in a zone table. The UVAR has some basic attributes like the name, like it's typed, or like the status of the UVAR. The implementation of the UVAR is performed by issuing one or more traffic regulation orders. A low emission zone can, for example, consist of road closures for a whole area or zone with certain exemptions. The implementation of the UVAR is performed by issuing one or more traffic regulation orders. A low emission zone can, for example, consist of road closures for a whole area zone with certain exemptions. The regulations that are issued via the traffic regulation order are defined in one or more traffic regulations. The traffic regulation has a type of regulation, which in this case is an access restriction of type no entry. The applicability is checked against a set of conditions that all need to be met for the restriction to become applicable. Hence, the conditions are represented by a set of conditions that are combined by an AND operator. In the condition set, there are usually 4 conditions: a validity condition, a location condition, applicability conditions, and conditions regarding exemptions. The validity condition defines the time validity of the traffic regulation. The location condition defines the location of the traffic regulation. The applicability conditions define all the conditions under which the traffic regulation applies. For example, a vehicle condition to define a specific vehicle type. And there is a condition set which includes all exemptions of the traffic regulations. Here, the negate attribute is set to true and the operator attribute to or. This means that if one of the exemptions holds, the overall condition set is false, and therefore the conjunction in the topmost condition set becomes false as well. Thus, the traffic regulation does not apply. After the conditions, permit information is being described. To close the form, the user can use the cancel, save, or save and exit button. Besides importing an already existing UVAR, it is possible to create an UVAR on the tool. For this purpose, one of the available templates has to be selected after clicking the Create button. What is a template in this context? A template refers to a specific UVAR type with conditions, attributes, and values already pre-filled. As a result, the form for the definition of the UVAR is generated based on the template. This is used to simplify the process of defining an UVAR because only the city or regional specific characteristics have to be filled in or changed. For example, the issuing authority or the geometry. Hence, having well-defined templates eases the process of creating a UVAR. So as a user, you have to fill in the basic attributes, like different time attributes, like the publication date and the publication time. The publication creator, which in this case is represented by the alpha 2 code. So for example, for Germany, and the national identifier. Or the information status, in this case, test. Going to the zone table and the UVAR-specific information, one has to define certain attributes, like name of the UVAR or its status. Inside the traffic regulation order, at least the issuing authority and the regulation ID should be filled in. Also, the status of the traffic regulation order is needed. When it comes to the traffic regulation itself, at least the type of regulation, in this case an access restriction, has to be defined. Regarding the conditions or the condition set, at least the validity condition and the location condition have to be set to define the specific UVAR. In this example, we will set an overall start time for the validity time specification. For the location condition, the spatial extent can be defined as an area. For the location condition, the spatial extent can be defined as an area. For this purpose, the following use cases are supported by the UVARbox tool. To manually digitize the geometry, add a geometry from an existing shapefile, and edit an existing geometry. For this purpose, I have to enable the extended editing mode to be actually able to add new elements. Pressing the respective button for drawing a geometry allows on the one side to manually digitize the geometry of the UVAR, and on the other side, it automatically opens the map that is shown now on the left side. I can zoom to the area of interest And by clicking with the left mouse button, I can add vertices for the geometry as needed. By double-clicking, I finish drawing the polygon and now have the geometry of an UVAR defined. If you want to remove the area of interest or create a new polygon, you can either edit the existing polygon or you can delete the area and create a new one. For example, you can also import a geometry from an existing shapefile. You have to click this button, and then as a prerequisite for this use case, you need an existing shapefile containing polygons stored in the zip file. So at first, one has to select the zip file. After that, the features of the loaded shapefile can be searched and afterwards selected and confirmed for import. As you can see, when selecting a feature from the shapefile, the map automatically pans and zooms to the area. And you can also see that you could afterwards edit the geometry being selected from the shapefile. After defining the geometry and based on the used template, the city or regional specific attributes of the UVAR are set. But of course, if there are special conditions that differ from the template, the user can delete, edit, or add specific conditions or information about the UVAR. When finishing with editing the UVAR, the user can save the UVAR by utilizing the Save or the Save and Exit button. At the moment of saving, a validation of the user input takes place. The result is a positive or negative validation. In case of a negative validation, the validation information is being displayed and allows the user to correct the open issues or save anyway to correct them at a later stage. The user can then save the UVAR by utilizing the Save or Save and Exit buttons. At the moment of saving, a validation of the user input takes place. The result is a positive or negative validation. In case of a negative validation, the validation information is being displayed and allows the user to correct the open issues or save anyway to correct them at a later stage. For example, in this example, I did not fill in one of the fields that are necessary. So here, this version field, as you can see, is required, but is not yet filled in. At this moment, I decide to correct it at a later stage because I have to check and edit some other attributes as well. So I can use the Save Anyway to save and exit the form. So when being back at the list, we can now see the new UVAR, the LSZ demonstration pops up here in the list. And we can also see the validation status here. So as it could not be validated positively, there's no green tick at the LSZ demonstration. If you want to update an already imported or created UVAR, it's pretty much the same process that we have seen before. It requires to open the form of the UVAR by pressing the Edit UVAR icon or button in the list. The form opens, as seen in the previous use cases, import of a fully digitized UVAR and creation of an UVAR on the tool. So now I can go through the form again and edit where I need to edit things. So to wrap up, we saw how to create an UVAR in terms of importing of a fully digitized UVAR in DATEX2 format, and how to create an UVAR based on a template on the tool. For detailed information about the UVAR box tool, please have a look at the corresponding user manual and the project website. Thanks for watching.